Hello guys, this tutorial is going to cover short primitive type and its wrapper class. So if you've been following along with my Java series, you should have a folder like this, or you should have created a class already inside of either a folder on your machine or created one and tell the idea. So what I'm going to do is under primitive.type, software that I created on the source, I'm going to go ahead and create a new class, and I'm going to call this primitive short and wrapper. Alright, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and actually create main. So main, remember main is public static void main, takes in a string arrays, and we call this args. Alright, so what I want to do first is we want to learn how to create a short variable. So remember I said before, you give the type and then you give the box the name, which is going to be for the variable, and then you give it a value. We're going to give this 15. And for us to access the value, we can use the system.out.println method to actually print out the value in S, which should be 15. I'm going to run this, and you guys can see it's 15. Alright, so what we can do is that we can also go ahead and create another variable of type J. And let's say we don't know what we want to store in J, we can just keep it like this. However, we can't just go ahead and print out J, because J here hasn't been initialized yet. So if we went ahead and try to print this out, we should get an error saying that the value J has not been initialized. Okay, so for us to initialize J, we can either initialize J inside of println here, or we can go ahead and initialize it outside of it. So we can go ahead and say J equals 2, and we can use multiplication, right? So we say S, the value in S times 2. Okay, so the reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you guys what this does. So it says that incompatible type, short required but found int. So what we have to do is we have to do explicit casting. Okay, so you guys have seen me do this before multiple times, where we put the type right in front of the calculation that we want inside of this open and close parentheses. Okay, and what that does is it says, well, we know what we're trying to store, we know how big it is, and we know that it's going to fit inside of this short variable. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually print that, and you see that we get 30, right? Because our initial value here was in S was 15, and then we took 15 times 2, we get 30. All right, however, how do we know that 30 can actually fit inside of this short variable? So what we can do is that we can actually use the static fields inside of the class variable, right, which is the wrapper class, to figure out what's the minimum and maximum values that we can store inside of a short primitive type. So let's go online for a second here, and I already pull up the documentation for the short wrapper class. And at the top here, you can see that we can get the amount of bytes, we can get the maximum value, the minimum value, your size and twos complement, and then the type that the value actually stores, all right, or the wrapper class actually stores. So let's go ahead and get those. So what I want to do is I want to do a SRT here, and then I'm going to do storage and bytes, right? And for us to access that static field, remember I said static fields belong to the class, so we use a class name, and then we use byte. Okay, and that would give us 2 bytes for short. And what we can do is for the maximum value, so it's a max value, and remember what we're doing here, we're concatenating. So for the max value, we use a name again because that's a static field, and we're going to use max value. All right, and then we can use get the min value. So I'm going to do this min value, and you know, let me. All right, and then we can use again the name short, and then we can get the mean value. All right, so now that we have that, we know how many bytes we can store inside of it. We should know the max value now and the min value. So let me go ahead and run this. And you guys can see that for a short variable type, we have 2 bytes for the storage size. The maximum value is 32,767, and the minimum value is 32,768 negative. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go ahead here and actually let me show you guys something new here. So I'm going to use system.out.printf, and what this does is it takes in a formatted string. Okay, and what the formatted string does is it has ways that we can actually format a string by passing in specifiers. Okay, so %s means it's a specifier for a string, and %n is a specifier for a new line, and then you have to pass in those values, or else it will print, or else it will give you an error. So the value I want to pass in is this long dot line, which represents a string, because the string goes in quotation marks. So now when I go ahead and I print this, you see that it brings a line and it pushes everything to the next line. Okay, because this is in the bottom, or else it should be around here. So with this done, so what I want to do is we've seen how to create a variable of type of the primitive type short, right? But we haven't created a variable of its wrapper class. So let's go into the documentation for a second here. And what you want to do first is look at the constructors, because the constructors tell us how to create new objects of any type of class, right? So we see that to create a wrapper class of short, you would create a variable of short and then say new short and then pass in the short value. And then same here with the string. However, you can see that these constructors have been deprecated, or will be deprecated, because they're no longer being used. There says it's rarely being used, right? So it doesn't really tell us how we can go ahead and get this. But if you know about wrapper classes with auto boxing and unboxing, you can realize that we can just put the value straight into the wrapper class and it will handle that. Okay. So to create a variable of type wrapper class short, we use a capital short just like we would use here, because remember that it's a class, so all classes are capitalized. And I'm going to call this S, and no, let me call this A, and then this is going to be equal to 15. All right, and then I can create another variable here. I'm going to call this B, and this is going to be equals to 30. And I'm going to create another short here, C, and this is going to equal to 45. And another one, D, and this is going to equal to 60. Okay, so we have 4 variables here, all right, or 4 instance variable, 4 variables, instances of type short. Okay, so what we can do is that we can do regular calculations like we would do. So we say A plus B, right, and that should give us 45. So I'm going to go ahead and run that, and you guys can see we get 45. You can say A plus B plus C, and that should give us 90. Okay, so that works as well. So we can do the same type of mathematics that we would use with the primitive type. Okay, so but however, these wrapper classes, they come with extra functionalities, right? Let's say we want to compare A and B. So we would say something like A dot compare to B, and if that is equal to 0, that means that they're equal to each other. But if it's not, it's going to print out false. So right now A does not equal B, so they're false. Okay, but if A was equal to B, let's change this to 30, and we run this one more time. You can see that we get the value true. Okay, so what else can we use? We can use the actual class itself to say, well, let's check to see if we can use the short class, and then we can use compare. Okay, what compare does, takes in 2 short variables, right? So we have a variable, we can use A and we can use B, or it doesn't matter how you put it. You can put A or B in any direction, in the order, and if that is equal to 0, then this is going to be true, right? So let's see if, for example here, let's say how if we want to check if A is less than B. So we'll say that we just say if A, right, or B is less than A. So B is less than A. No, it's not. So this should give us false. Okay. However, is B greater than A? Let me unbox this. All right. So the check says, is B greater than A? What is going on? Oh, I keep it in control. All right. So we'll say is B and shift greater. Oh Lord. If shift greater than A, so that should be true because B is greater than A, right? Okay. So one more thing that we can use is we can use equals. So with this part, we'll say something like I'll say something like C dot and then C dot equals to B. If C equals to B, this is shorter. If C equals to B, the answer is false. Right? And if we were to change this to plus 15, okay, now let's try that. See what happens. See that we actually get true. Alright. Alright, so what else can we do? So what we can do is that we can actually convert any primitive type to type string, okay? And how do we do that? So what we can do is that we can say something like string convert, right, equals to a dot to string. And what this does is that it would create a string variable, right, of whatever value is inside of a. So a is 15, so we go ahead and do srt, and let's pass in converted. And when we go ahead and print converted, it should be 15, right? So it is 15. So how do we know that this is a string and not an actual number? The reason is because when we add, if we add 2 to this, we should get 17, right? And not 152. Because what strings, when you add strings, what you do is that you append to it. You don't add it. So let's go ahead and run this. And we should get 152, okay? So now that we know how to do that, right? What else can we do with this? All right. So one way that we typically find if an object is unique or not is something called a hash code, okay? And it's easier to show you guys if I create a method, for instance. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a private static. I'm going to do string here, and I'm going to call this hash. And what it's going to take in is a string array. No, let's take in a short array, right? And I'm going to call this hash codes. And then I'm going to go ahead and check for this code here, which is let's do search code, right? So I want to see if we have a matching hash code inside of our arrays here. So arrays is a container that keeps track of the same type of variable or type, okay? So to create an array of type int, we say int and then array a equals, and then since it's an object, we say equals to new int, and then we give it a value. And sometimes it does this. So what we want to do is that we want to take this and put it in front. Oh, and the reason why it's giving a complaint is because I already had a, so let's change this to f. Okay, so that makes more sense. I thought I was just going crazy. I thought I was doing the wrong way, but you should be able to do it like that. So f, and that still works, okay? So what we want to do is we want to use a for loop. I haven't showed you guys how to use for loop here, but a for loop is something that you use to go over something multiple times, right? So remember, a loop goes in and out, in and out, in and out, like a black hole. You're stuck in the loop, you can't get out, right? But these loops actually have a condition where you can actually get out, all right? And what I want to do is I want to use a for each loop, and what I want to do is stick in a short here. I'm going to call this code, and what I want to go loop over is we want to loop over our hash codes. Okay, so I want to see if this searchable code is inside of this hash code collection here. So we're going to say if code dot hash code, right, equal to search dot hash code. Then what we can do here is we could return, and what we want to return is, let's just return search code dot toString. Right, so that's going to return the value. Or we could return no search code found. All right, so because we're returning string, we can literally return a string like this. All right, so here we have all of the shorts here. So what we can do is that we can create an array of shorts. So I'm gonna go ahead and create an array here. I'm gonna call this codes. All right, and this is gonna equal to, and then we can pass in the values that we want in here. So I'll say A, B, and C. Okay, I'm gonna keep D out because we're gonna use a test to see if it doesn't exist. So what I want to do is we're gonna go S out T here, and what I want to do is want to use this method that we wrote here called hash. So I'm gonna go ahead and say hash, and then we want to pass in the array of hash codes. So which is gonna be codes. And then now what we want to do is we want to see if any of these codes are actually part of inside of this table. So now A, B, and C are inside of this table. So if we pass in A, we should get 15 because our method is actually printing the toString representation of the value stored inside of that variable or that type. Okay, so if we pass in A, right, and we go ahead and hit print, you see that we get 15. All right, and if we passed in C here, then you see that we get 45 for C, right? And now let's say we pass in, let's create something else. Let's just say new short, all right? And let's give this, I know it's deprecated, right? But when it's deprecated, I want to show you guys something. When it's deprecated, you see this line go right across it, and let's give it a value of 34. All right, so we didn't include this inside of our array here. So let's go ahead and see. So it's gonna say, well, that no search code found because this was not part of it. Also, if we went ahead here and passed in D, it should give us the same thing because we didn't add D inside of our search code container here, array. So it should say that it was not found as well. Alright guys, this will be it for this tutorial. I hope you guys learned a lot. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm always willing to help. If you like the tutorial, please subscribe and like. I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good day. Bye bye.